Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, bonjour, buongiorno, bon dia, buenos dias, guten Morgen, Ohio, because doesn't matter where you are in the world. You are watching Steffi's talk show. I'm Steph. Welcome. And today in the show, we will be diving into the state of the London and the UK real estate market, challenges, opportunities, or innovations. And I'm thrilled to have with us a true visionary from the London real estate, Alan Waxman, founder of Landmass London. Over more than 2 decades, he has taken the company from its beginning as the boutique developer to a multi-award winning. Alan, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm already starting to blush red with all those compliments. So I hope
Oh,
I can still articulate properly after that fabulous introduction.
thank you, but that's actually just fact. You have been quite, building a strong real estate company, related company. So I'm not going to say more than that because I want you to introduce yourself and to tell everything about Landmass. Tell us everything, Alan.
So that's a really good question. Before Landmass, I was working for a friend of mine's skiwear company, looking after the international distribution for two brands of skiwear, Vica and Killy, and the international subsidiaries in France, Switzerland, and America. But I had this urge to do my own business. A couple of friends of mine were in property, and they agreed to help me get started. So what I initially did was to buy some very small properties to rent out, as I saw that there was a growing demand for good properties to rent out in the London market, and also starting in a small way is a very good way of learning from your various mistakes that you'll do over the start.
Great. So in one sentence, how would you describe the current mood of the London real estate market?
Um, so bad.
Bad.
so
That
so the Lo- the so the
that's
London
important.
the so the London market at the moment generally is very, very flat, right? There's been, high taxes, the economy is not doing well, people leaving the UK, especially the rich people, the non-doms. So unless you have a property which is exceptional, it's a difficult market to sell in at the moment, right? The agents, of course, will always be very, very positive, but it's a difficult market to sell in.
Okay. So what is the biggest shift have you seen in the last 12 to 18 months?
Because uh, the shift in the desire from clients is really, um, clients become more knowledgeable, right? Uh, 20 years ago, they didn't have much of a clue about what they wanted, so they could easily be led. Now the clients will come to you with very specific tastes, very specific specifications, what their needs are. Um, and that could be in relation to layout, the types of rooms, the level of audio visual specifications. So some people might want super electronic, super sophisticated at one extreme. At the other extreme, they just want to have a push button with a dimmer switch, right? So
Yes.
it's listening to what the clients want, which is super, super important.
Yes, that's definitely important. So let's focus a little bit more about the key challenges. With land scarcity and high cost, what is the toughest hurdle that you face when acquiring sites in London?
So there's three challenges, and then now I'm talking as a developer. Uh, One is the cost of the site. Secondly is the cost of construction, and third is the cost of borrowing money from the bank. Because when we look at a project, um, in order to analyze it, we just look at three things. What can we sell it for? How long is it going to take? Which that affects the interest costs and what's it's going to cost to sort out, which obviously affects your development costs. And then we plug all those things into our appraisal and then pops out what we can afford to pay for it. But the challenge is with the higher costs and even though the market is depressed, vendors in many cases are still looking for unrealistic prices. That's why the properties, especially a lot of the unmodernized properties, stay on the market an awful long time because nobody wants to pay what they want.
Okay, all right. What about sustainability and innovation? How is the push for the net zero and ESG standards changing the way you design or select projects?
So that's a really good question because obviously ESG is the buzzword on sustainability, etc. It very much depends on the type of project that you're doing. So if you're doing a a new build um, multi-unit project, then in order to get all the planning permissions, uh, the council planners will require very specific ESG criteria, right? So
Yes.
there you have to follow what the stipulations are, and they are becoming stricter and stricter. If you're doing a renovation of an existing property, you're very limited to what you can do on the environmentally friendly uh, technical point of view, right? Because we're talking about heating, lighting, insulation, right? So, for instance, solar panels in most parts of central London, you're not allowed to put in solar panels, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So you might think, well, that doesn't make sense because it could save on the electricity. Secondly, for in London we have historical buildings, and there we have different levels of grading, and at the higher grades, for instance, you can't put in double glazing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Again, which will obviously would help save heat, but you're not allowed to do it, right? So
Okay.
my point is that in some the new build, very, very strict. For uh, other properties, you're sometimes limited by about what you're able to do. Obviously, we always want to do what we think is best, um, but you don't always have those opportunities.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let's focus now a little bit more about landmass and maybe the actual projects. Can you share a recent landmass project that captured your approach to design and development?
So that's a really interesting question. And if you allow me, I'll highlight two projects that we've done.
Okay.
Um, so one project was in an area called Belgravia, just next to Hyde Park Corner, for those who know London. There's a big hotel called the Lanesborough Hotel, and just behind there is a gated mews house. So mews houses in the olden days were used for the rich people who had horses. So they'd have a big house where they lived, and then they'd have a mews house where the horses and the stable people lived above the horses, right? And they're all sort of old cobbled areas. So this house, it just had windows at the front. So it had houses all around it. And so it was very dark, as you can imagine, if you just had windows at the front. So we took out a rear corner, put a glass retractable roof, and a 10.5 meter waterfall going down to a Zen garden. So in essence, we turn the negative to a positive. So when you walk through the door, you went, wow, you weren't expecting to see that with the waterfall and the massive amount of light coming in and the high ceilings. So there we actually won Best Interior Design in the country and Best Development in London. And actually, there was a famous Australian actress called Nicole Kidman who wanted to
Yeah.
buy it. I met with her, and then she got pregnant and changed her strategy of where she wanted to live, and we eventually sold it to a French financier. But on the back of that, people then came to me and said, Alan, we like what you do as a developer. Can you do design work for our clients? So to date, we've done over 30 projects as a developer, buy, develop, and sell. And then we've done about 110 projects for private clients, mostly in the United Kingdom. But then we've also done some troubleshooting for investors in France as well. And what I mean by troubleshooting is there's certain types of investors and developers who are very good with their spreadsheets, but they don't understand product. And I give the example of a dog. The dog has a tail, and either the dog is wagging the tail or the tail is wagging the dog. And what I mean by that is they're very good with their spreadsheets and they bring in their team of experts to tell them what they should have. And that's what we call the tail wagging the dog. And then when the project is finished, nobody wants to buy them because they think, what have they created? And I'm sure you and your viewers in the past have been into projects and you've always wondered, why have they done this? And the principal reason is because they didn't have the experience and they'd be reliant upon professionals to tell them what they should have,
Ah,
as against the developer being the conductor of the orchestra, i.e., the dog, brings in their design team. And sometimes the design team win the argument, sometimes the developer wins the argument. But the main thing is that the developer has the vision of what needs to be created. Because if you're doing design and development at a medium to high level, the buyers are spending a lot of money. So
oh,
when they go into the property, if they don't like what they see, they don't say to the agent, would they take a discount? They say to the agent, what else do you have? And
yeah,
the same for you, Stephanie. If you were get to go into Louis Vuitton and you wanted to buy a certain type of handbag, and they didn't have the size and the color, you don't ask the salesperson, would you take a discount for something you don't really want? You
mm,
just say, you just go next door to Prada or Gucci or whatever, right?
mm,
And and there's it's no different for property. So you uh I you have to get the product right, and on that particular one in Belgravia, um, which people wrote about an awful lot because we did things which people hadn't seen before. That was a very significant project for us. And then a few years later, I bought a very small house in a part of London called Notting Hill, which was made famous by the film um, with Hugh Grant called Notting Hill. And um, this was a chocolate box of a house. And what I mean by a chocolate box, it was about 650 square foot or about 60 square meters. Yeah. So very small on 2 floors. And uh, I, we knocked it down and we made it wider, higher, and lower. And so we increased the size um, 5 times to over 300 square meters or over 3,200 square feet. And what we did there is we dug down and did a double basement. Now, this is quite uh, specialized for London, where the cost of property is very high and where there's lots of houses, right?
yeah,
Which is unusual for a capital city if you compare it, say, to Paris or New York, where it's mostly apartment blocks. In London, you have an awful lot of houses. And because the cost of the space is so high, we've done quite a lot of digging down.
Mm.
Agents used to think of me as the mole.
Okay.
And if viewers want to Google me, there's a BBC program called Millionaire Basement Wars,
Oh,
which was filmed, I think, back in 2014, but you can find it on YouTube, where they basically film different types of people involved in doing basements. And the thing about it is how do you create good quality space? Because a lot of people think of basements as being dark, damp, and dingy, whereby we put in good ceiling heights, lots of light, which we introduce by having voids and drama within project. So that was another project we did where again we won various awards for the design. So I hope that gives you a bit of a spin. People can see these things on our website if they want to.
okay. Interesting. Just a question that I'm thinking right now in terms of your projects. How are you today in 2025 having more projects than probably last year or 2 years ago or less?
So at the moment, actually less. On the client side, we've got three projects that we're working on in some of the best parts of Notting Hill, of London. On the development side, we actually don't have any project that we're on at the moment. We're out hunting for sites to buy,
Okay.
and it hasn't been easy to find the right things, and we don't want to buy things just for the sake of it. Um, we're looking actually at the moment at two very interesting buildings on a fabulous square called Lincoln's Inn. Lincoln's Inn is famous in London for having all the lawyers working there.
Okay.
It's very sort of old, an old part of London, right? Beautiful buildings. So traditionally for the lawyers, and they're still obviously very active in that area. But there's this beautiful garden square called Lincoln's Inn Field, and there's two fabulous buildings there. Now, what's interesting is that these buildings are the most difficult to design because their listing is the very highest listing. So it's very, very difficult to make any changes to it, but that's part of the challenge. And if we can get the numbers to work, then that'd be beautiful. And we're working with the architect, the planning consultant, the cost controller, etc., to do all our due diligence to then see whether we can uh, do a project like that. But it it's exciting times to go looking for properties in London. Uh, most people at the moment are more negative about the London market rather than positive. But
Okay.
that's I always think is a good time to actually buy because your power of negotiation can also be higher as well.
That's a good idea. That's the businessman in you for sure. Good. So you a little bit answer a little bit already to the next question, but let's dive a little bit more because even if you listen to the news or even from words out there, a lot is going on right now in London and specifically regarding the real estate. When it comes to policies and outlook, how are the current UK planning reforms or housing policies shaping your strategy in the next 5 years?
So for me in London, the planners have always been challenging and will always remain challenging, right? That's not a specific answer, but because of the heritage of the areas, there's a lot of limitations about what you can do. And if you want to change there's two things. If you have a residential property, how you can improve it, right? By adding some space, maybe going up a story to the side or digging down. So there with the planners, you sort of know pretty much roughly what you can and can't do before you go to approach them for permission, right? You then have, say, commercial building or a hotel that you may want to change into a residential. And depending on the area, there's three situations, right? One is where you know you're not going to get the permission because they strictly say you can't change it from this to that. Yeah. The second is where they quite the opposite. You know that you will get the permission to change the use. The question is how big a size you can do it. And the third is obviously the gray area, which maybe hasn't been tested or you think there's a possibility, but there you have to be a lot more cautious.
All right. So back to my question, what that means, what this looks like for the next 5 years for landmass.
For the next 5 years, it the planners are not really uh, it means that we just have to be very careful in what we buy, you know, and we need to do good due diligence and work with good people. Um, because there's not going to be, I don't think, many massive changes over the next 5 years in central London to the planning, right? There's no magic wand where they can say, oh, everybody can do this or everybody can't do that. It each each council in London has their own rules, right? So
Yeah.
there's not one rule that fits all. So, for instance, in some council areas, you can do a single basement. In some council areas, you can do a double basement, right? It,
Yes.
it, some you can dig under the garden, some you can only dig under the house. It depends on the locality. So you you have to not only have a general idea what you can, but each council has their own specific criteria that you have to fit in with. Again, some properties in some areas they will uh, allow you to get a permit for a car. In other areas, that for different types of project, they won't allow you to have a car permit because they want
Okay.
to keep it car free.
Yeah.
That's just a couple of examples, practical examples.
Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, London can be, I mean, there's quite a lot of few rules to follow and to know as well. And that's also actually following up with my next question. Looking ahead, what are the big trends for the future regarding technology, demographic, or regulatory? Will most influence London development in the next decade?
So again, it depends on the type of project that you're doing. So, you know, if you go uh, to somewhere like Dubai, for instance, branded residences are becoming more and more popular, right?
Yes.
So the British are not that into branded residences, right?
No. No. Yeah.
Uh, and if they are done, they have to be done super, super well. There is one developer who's done a branded residence. I won't mention who they are because it's a disaster, right?
Oh,
It's done really, really badly, and they've had massive problems in trying to sell all the apartments. So if it is to be done, it needs to be done really well. So um, I think knob appeal in the better areas works backwards and differently because I think if you're doing a project in a difficult area, then maybe a branded residence could help. But if you're doing it in a super smart area like Knightsbridge or Mayfair, etc., would buyers pay a premium price to want to live there. Maybe some will. I don't know. It hasn't been tested yet, right?
Okay.
Um, but uh, a lot of people like to keep their own originality rather than be associated with a specific brand because it then, you know, can turn people off. But I also, and I'm going to contradict myself, there's also people in the world, and I'm sure you come across them. They like to talk about three things: what they have, who they know, and what they do. And those sort of people who are perhaps very materialistic, they will maybe like to have a branded residence because it gives them something to talk about and gives them a feeling of self-esteem. Oh, I live in XYZ residence. So it's uh it's horses for courses, and I'm not trying to sound derogatory about people, etc., but different people like different things. Um, I think you know, trend wise, people appreciate good quality materials. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I like to separate design into two parts: the layouts and the finishes. So for us, what's super important is getting the layouts right. We spend an awful lot of time doing that. And then in relation to the finishes, you know, whereby a lot of these, you know, if we're doing a property which has, say, um, 40 apartments in, right? We wouldn't design them all the same, right? We'd
Okay.
maybe do 10 in a contemporary way, 10 in a traditional way, 10 in what I call a Ralph Lauren type way, which is very rich colors,
Yeah.
etc. And then the other 10, I don't know yet. Maybe you leave them blank and let people do their own thing, right?
Okay.
What- the point is that different people like different things, right? And we all have different tastes. There's no right or wrong. But I think that if to do everything pretty similar is a bit bland, and I would put a bit of a mix together. And also from the technology point of view, so today, you know, with Wi-Fi, you don't need all the wiring that you used to have, right? You can keep things a lot simpler. Secondly, you know, there was this urge, you know, a few years ago, everything electronic, and I think there's more people who've taken that out and put in a push button dimmer switch. So um, I think that if my next development, you know, because I've used things like Lutron electronic stuff in the past, but I think this time we'd keep it really simple. You may do the wiring for a more sophisticated thing if they want to put it in, but I would just put in, you know, beautiful switches with nice dimmer switches. And generally speaking, I think most people prefer that simplicity. There's, you know, you can say there's too much technology, right,
Okay. Yeah.
around, and it can do people's heads in. At the same time, and again, I'm going to contradict myself. Um, you could also go to the other extreme and do an AI inspired development, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which, which is completely the other extreme. You know, that would be focusing on the wealthy 20 to 30-year olds who love all that stuff. And, you know, they like the fact that there's maybe a robot sitting behind the concierge desk and they don't have to say anything to anybody because that generation, they don't really like speaking to people. They like to do everything by text message. You know, they don't pick up they won't pick up the telephone and call down to the concierge. They'll send them a message, right? So everything is will be digitalized for them.
Well, I think it's just, it's a generational thing. It's two different way of communications.
Absolutely. because you say to people, have you spoken to somebody, and then they show you the telephone where they've typed out a message. I said, no, have you spoken actually on the telephone? And they're, oh, no, that it's a different mentality. But
Yeah,
again, it's catering for that mentality. And as I said, there's no right or wrong. Different people want different things. And as a developer, you want to, because all you do is creating a product, and it doesn't matter whether I like it or you like it or the agent likes it. All that matters is, does the buyer want it? So it's understanding the buyer's needs.
true. Totally understand that. One questions, a very simple question. Who are the landmass clientele?
Who are?
Yeah, who are they? Is most of them, or it is more international?
Um, I would say a lot, very international, right? Uh,
Okay.
so at the moment, we are doing a new house in a part of London called Holland Park, um, for a Chinese young family. They've got one baby, they've got another baby on the way. We've done, we're just finishing a penthouse in Soho for a Swiss couple. Um, we've just finished a beautiful apartment in a place called Marylebone for a Singaporean family. We've done uh, properties for people uh, from Dubai. Um, uh, my
Okay,
last,
so those the Chinese and Middle East, I would say, are your biggest
uh,
client.
I wouldn't say that, the last property I sold were two Swiss brothers. Before that, it was a French chap and his Russian wife. Um, Before that, it was a Qatari family who bought a house in Belgravia from me. So I would
Yeah.
say very, very international, very
Yeah.
international. You really um, don't know who's going to be interested in what. Yeah, but
All right.
London is a pool of internationalism.
Yes, that's definitely why I like this city. Okay. And so final questions for you. What's the one piece of advice that you would give to someone entering property development today?
So again, that's a really good question, and I'm going to separate that into two parts, if I may, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is starting very small, because you're going to make mistakes, and it's much better to learn a mistake that's not going to cost you a lot rather than that's going to cost you a lot. So, for instance, from my own point of view, my own experience, the first proper development I bought, it was two floors above a wine shop, and I had to move the location. No, I decided to move the location for the kitchen 3 times. So I was clever enough to realize that I did not know what I was doing, but I was also clever enough to realize the importance of layouts and space planning. Okay. And when we finished that, I then got a Feng Shui specialist to come and check it. And she was happy with it. And we sold them relative to the market quite well. So my point is, you're going to make mistakes, right? And obviously you learn from those mistakes. Um, or as my father used to say, Alan, try and learn from other people's mistakes, not always your own. But it's part of the learning curve to go through these things, but much better to do it on small things than big things. The second thing is, especially when you're starting out, the automatic thing is to cut corners, right? And not always bring in the right professional team that you may need because you think, well, you want to save money, you're going to do it yourself. The challenge with that is, first of all, you're going to make more mistakes. But secondly, you're not going to learn from the benefit of the professional team because you need to learn, how they do things. And if I give an example, when we're doing a project, we have a project manager to manage the builder. We have a quantity surveyor to manage the costs. And then we have a contract administrator to manage the contract with the builder because things always change on a project. And also, it's important that you have a very good relationship with your team, which also includes the design team and the builder. The reason for that is because during the process, it doesn't matter how good the design is, how good the tender document is, how good the builder is, there's always problems to sort out, right? Anybody who's done a project, big or small, has more bad stories than good stories because of all the things they need to sort out. Now, the reason for that is very simple. We don't have a prototype. So, for instance, if you're a luxury car manufacturer, uh, you have a prototype before you go into production. As a developer, we don't have that benefit because, in a way, what we're looking to do is to design and manufacture a brand new luxury motor car, but in an old factory, because each project is an old factory. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because we don't have the prototype, we have to learn it on the project. And so, because we're learning it on the project, we have problems, challenges, issues, hurdles, whatever you want to call them, to sort out during the process. So you have to have a good team to help you find the solutions each step of the way. So
Okay.
those are my two things. Start small and have a good team around you to learn from. I hope that's of some
Yeah.
assistance.
That sounds quite a good advice. So coming from a professional. So that's good. Thank you very much, Alan.